I'm Dana K. White. I am the author of Decluttering at the Speed of Life, and I am the creator of the No Mess Decluttering process. So I'm here to clear up confusion that you might feel sometimes when people start talking about decluttering. I believe that a lot of the confusion that happens about decluttering is that what you're hearing being said feels like it is coming from the perspective of someone with a very different starting point than where you are. So I think it's important to understand that we all have different starting points. Whatever starting point you're at, that's great, right? You want to declutter? Let's go for it, okay? The no mess process is going to work for whatever your situation, whatever your level of clutter. But I think sometimes if you've heard people talk about decluttering and you've thought, this isn't making any sense to me, the reason is because your starting points are different. So I just want to give you an example of a kitchen drawer. One of them is my real kitchen drawer before I started doing this. Like before I started doing this today, not like before I started decluttering in the beginning. One of them is mine, but two others are staged to show different places where people are starting, which then changes and colors what you're hearing in decluttering advice, okay? And through that, I'm gonna explain to you why we do the no mess process, why we have 5 steps that take us through completely being overwhelmed all the way to getting the space done, okay? So this is the first one. This might be your starting point. Or maybe this one is your starting point. Or maybe, I would venture to say a lot of people watching my channel might have a drawer like this one. Or maybe you did at some point, okay? So the reason when you hear people talk about decluttering and the first thing that they're talking about is making decisions about what they need, what they might ever use, do they think they're gonna, need it in the future? Is it useful? Is it valuable? All that kind of stuff. If they're talking about this drawer, then it makes sense to immediately start analyzing whether or not you need a corn skewer, right? Do we ever eat corn? How often do we eat corn? Are there people in my family who we have over on a regular basis who love corn? Is this something that we actually need this thing for? Or could we use a fork? Or do people actually use corn skewers anymore? Or like those are questions that it makes total sense to start there if your starting point looks like this one, the first one, okay? But if your starting point looks like this one, the third one, and you think that you need to get in there and immediately start asking yourself whether or not you're ever going to use a corn skewer, that is what causes people like me, it used to cause me to get overwhelmed immediately and feel like I can't declutter. I look at this space and I pick something up and I start analyzing it and my brain just starts going, but I like my corn skewers. I got these for my wedding, but also we don't have corn very often, but when we do, we use it. And I actually really like corn now that I think about it. We should eat corn more often. Those are the things that go through my brain. Meanwhile, I'm getting more and more overwhelmed trying to make a decision about this. And that overwhelm is impacted and increased by the fact that I am looking at a space that looks like it's going to have 15 more other things that I'm going to have to make this hard of a decision about too. And that's the thing that causes me to get overwhelmed and shut down. So that is why we start with the trash, okay? We start with the trash. There's trash in all 3 of these drawers. There's trash that needs to be removed. And even if there wasn't, starting with the trash has value, right? Because we start with looking at, is there anything in here that is actual trash or recycling if you have it, right? Like, is there anything in here that I can get out without having to analyze or think or feel feelings about how we don't even eat enough corn or all that kind of stuff? I don't have to go through that, but I can make real progress just getting the trash out, right? And so that's important and works in all the different levels, but it's crucial in that third level, right? The next step is the easy stuff. The stuff that already has an established home. Again, it's decision free. All I'm doing is reminding myself to look for stuff that already has an established home and get it out of there. That's the step. There's nothing to analyze. There's no questions to answer. It is literally just getting it out of there, because with everything that leaves that was easy, this space is a little bit less overwhelming. And I start to see what's actually in here that I'm going to have to deal with. And my brain is starting to adjust to that. And I'm feeling less overwhelmed because I'm making real progress before I ever have to make a corn skewer type decision, right? Then we go with the obvious donations. Sometimes we're like, why do you do obvious donations? Because if it's obvious, I don't want to waste my time asking questions about it. If you're looking at a space where you're thinking, oh, should I donate my corn skewer? Because that's basically all you have to decide in this space. Analyze that all you want. But if you're looking at a space that is completely overwhelming, the more things you can get out without having to think about it, without having to analyze, by saying, yeah, that can actually just go straight in the donate box. That's incredibly valuable when you're dealing with this higher level of clutter, right? As your starting point. And then we go through and we ask ourselves the questions. If I needed this item, where would I look for it first? In that first one, there's not much in there except for your silverware, right? Like cutlery, whatever you call it, wherever you live. So like that kind of stuff is the basic stuff that's in there. So there's really not much other than a couple of things that I might ask myself that about. But in the third drawer, there's a lot of stuff in there that I'm going to ask myself that about, okay? Things like the lighter, what are these called? Oh my word. The potato peeler, the doolollies, okay? The little mixer attachment things. These things, I'm going to ask myself that if I needed this item, where would I look for it first? And then I'm going to put it in that place, which is actually very nearby here. So it's not even a big trip for me to do that, but I'm going to go ahead and put those things in the place where I would look for it first, because there's a lot of stuff in there that I'm going to be asking myself that question about. There's also a lot of these things in there because the drawer was full of all kinds of things, which then ends up attracting stuff like this. Oh, I just throw things in that drawer. I just throw things in that drawer. Where when it is like picture one, I'm less likely to just throw things in that drawer because I can see immediately what's in there and what is supposed to be in there, right? But when it's a big mess, it just attracts more mess, right? So by the time I get to the point where I'm asking myself the 2 decluttering questions, where I am embracing the reality of this space and getting rid of things that don't fit, if I started with that third example, I'm ready for that now, because I've gotten a lot of stuff out there without any angst and any decision. So by the time I'm asking myself about corn skewers, I'm ready for that. I'm still not going to say, do we ever use them? When would we need them? I'm still just going to say, if I needed corn skewers, where would I look for it first? And if I say in that spot in the drawer, great. And then I'm going to let that spot in the drawer determine how many corn skewers I can keep, which then keeps my brain from spinning out on, oh, I don't know. What if Grandpa so-and-so comes over and I think he still has his teeth and I think he can still eat corn on the cob, or maybe he doesn't. Do I need to call him and ask him if he still has teeth? And then I can decide, do I need to keep some corn skewers for him or not? I can spin out, right? Instead, I am just using fact-based questions. If I needed corn skewers, where would I look for them first? Often, that is the thing that makes me realize I would never look for a corn skewer. I can stick it in my donate box. But asking myself that question is so much less pressure. It doesn't use the emotions, and I'm able to make a lot of progress quickly, okay? Because I had a very overwhelming space in the beginning, but I've made so much progress at this point. But I'm ready to do this, but I still have a strategy for it. And then by the time I get to the container concept, implementing the container concept, I start by consolidating. So if there are any random chopstick packets that are spread all through the drawer, I am going to put them all together in one spot. And then if they don't fit in that spot is going to help me decide. Okay. That spot helps me decide how many I can keep. So I get rid of my least favorite until I only have what will fit in that space. Right. And that is incredibly useful for the person who started with the space just being a complete disaster, right? So I just think it's really important that you understand that we all have different starting points, and that if you're hearing something and it overwhelms you, even just to hear it, consider that you might be starting from a different place than the person who's sharing what it is that they're doing decluttering, right? So I want to be clear here. I have my Just Declutter t-shirt on. When I say just declutter, I mean you will see a huge impact if all you do is declutter. If you don't worry about organizing, if you don't think about decorating, if you don't go and buy any new stuff, if you just get stuff out of the house, like if that's all you do is get stuff out of the house, your house is going to change. What I don't mean by just declutter is, oh, just declutter, like it's not a big deal. It's a really big deal to a lot of us, to a lot of you watching. It's a big deal to me. I'm somebody who it naturally happens in my house more than it does other people. My drawer was drawer number 2, which I'm kind of proud of, right? Like that was my natural drawer. It needed to be decluttered, but also there were many, many years where drawer number 3 was me, right? So I completely understand the overwhelm that happens when you open the packed full drawer with all kinds of randomness in it. And that's why the No Mess Decluttering process exists. That's why I came up with it, not in theory, but by dealing with my own stuff. I found what works. It works for me to have an actual process, and that process to lead me through out of feeling overwhelmed into gaining momentum. And it gives me the tools. By the time I get to the end, I am ready to make decisions about things like corn skewers, okay? But also, I make those decisions based on fact. The container concept is that space is finite, which means I can't keep everything. I can't just keep it all and keep shoving it in there, because if it's not functional and it doesn't fit in that space functionally, then there's no hope of it ever being under control. But the other side of that is that if I have space for corn skewers, I can keep corn skewers. I don't have to make an arbitrary decision or predict the future about when and how often we're going to eat corn on the cob. Instead, I get to say, well, I have the space for it, and this space can absolutely stay under control with these corn skewers, so I'm going to keep it. Knowing it's not going to be a value decision, even in the very end, that I'm not just going to have to arbitrarily get rid of things that I wish I could keep, but that I'm going to say, oh, if I have space, I can keep it. If I don't have space, I can't keep it. Knowing that that's how it's all going to end is actually what helps me get started in the beginning when it is completely overwhelming. Because if I think it's just going to be wrestling things out of my grip the whole entire time, that's the thing that makes me not even want to get started. So, all right, I hope this made any sense. I hope it was helpful, and I will talk to y'all next week. Bye.